All right, so not to keep everyone waiting, but I guess we can start now. So welcome everyone. Today our guest speaker is going to be Emma, who is TYE's founder and also an author, which is what she will be talking about today. Starting in 4th grade, Emma published her first story, Diary of a Gold Rush, and recently her new book, Nightingale, was released. And this webinar will also be extra special because we'll be having prizes. So pay attention to what Emma says and you will have the opportunity to win some very special prizes. And we'll go over how that will work later. And also, if you're new to TYE or haven't attended these webinars before, we have a mailing list that you can join to be notified of future events. So I'll put that link in the chat. And during the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, or you can wait until the end and unmute. There will be like a time to ask questions. So Emma, take it away.
All right, thank you everybody for being here again, and thanks Jacqueline for the introduction. I'm so excited to be here today just so I can share a little bit about myself and my writing journey, hopefully to inspire all the aspiring writers, you guys out there. So where we have a lot of content, well, I have a lot of content packed into this webinar, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. But before we get actually into my writing journey, let me introduce myself first for those of you who don't know me as well. So an overview of myself and my work. I'm 15 years old. I turned 15 in July, and I'm a current sophomore at Valley Christian High School in San Jose, California. As Jacqueline mentioned, I am the author of 2 published books, Diary of the Gold Rush, published in 2015. I was 10 years old and I was in 5th grade, although I started writing that one in 4th grade. This is what it looks like. I'm not sure if you guys can see my screen that well, but this is the print copy. I'll show my actual books in the following slide, but this is when I got it printed. It looks like this. And again, I published Nightingale, which is my new book, published in 2020, just a week ago, when I was 15 years old, of course, 10th grade, although I started writing that in March. I'm going to talk more about that later, but I was 14 and in 9th grade when I first started writing that. And for those of you who are wondering, this is how it looks. I just got it printed, so it's all pretty and it looks great. So I also teach writing classes to young students. I recognize a lot of you here today from my writing classes, so hello again. And in my free time, I do have a lot of hobbies. I enjoy entrepreneurship, as shown by TYE. I like writing, of course, that's why I wrote books. And I also enjoy playing music. I enjoy studying astronomy, and I also swim and play volleyball. So that's basically an overview of myself. So as previously mentioned, these are my 2 books. There's something you may have noticed on the left. This is Diary of the Gold Rush, as you can probably tell by the cover. It does look different from what I previously showed, which is this one. And that is because when I first published Diary of the Gold Rush back in 2015, I published it through Amazon KDP. And at that time, there was no print option. So you could only publish an ebook. And actually just recently, when I went back and published Nightingale, I realized that, wow, you can actually publish print books. They just added that. So that's why I ordered this one, or I printed this one. And of course, the cover looks different because I was too lazy to go and actually use that one that I have the ebook. So as of now, if you are going to buy Diary of the Gold Rush, you can only get it in ebook format. Who knows, maybe I might make a paperback one later, but as of now, it's only ebook, and that's why only the Kindle is shown. And then on the right is, of course, Nightingale, my book that was published very recently. This one is available in both paperback and ebook. Again, Amazon just added that, so it's very exciting. And this is what it actually looks like in real life. It's about 60,000 words, 60K words, and it's 300 pages in print. So those are my 2 books. So a little bit about this webinar. If you've been to any of my previous webinars, or if you came from my classes, you'll know that I love structuring out my classes and webinars just so it's a lot more easy to follow. So likewise, in this webinar, I structured it into 4 parts. The first part is all about my personal writing journey. So how I went from a reader to a writer. Part 2 is all about writing and publishing a book. I know a lot of people have come up to me and asked me, how did you do this? It seems impossible. It seems really hard. I mean, when I think of authors, I think of like the old ladies at home with their cats all day just writing on paper. So I'm going to simplify the process a lot, and I'm going to explain it in a kind of detailed way so you guys can understand it better. So if any of you guys want to publish, you'll know what steps to follow. Part 3 is all about tips and advice for aspiring writers. So all of you guys, I'll be sharing some of the tips and advice that I've gathered from other writers and authors and just pass it down to you guys. And of course, the last section is a Q&A. Like Jacqueline mentioned, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, go ahead and type it into the chat. I probably won't address them during the actual webinar because, again, I have a lot of content packed and I don't want to keep y'all over time because you guys have things to do. So I'll be answering all of those questions at the end. And P.S., there may be some giveaways included, so make sure you pay attention to the webinar so you have a chance to win some really cool prizes. So going right into it, topic 1, my personal writing journey. So starting from when I was very young, this is my early life. If you asked my parents or both my parents what I like to do when I was about 5 or 6 years old, they'll probably say that I loved reading. And that is true. I still love reading, of course. But I think when I was young, I think I was about 5, 6, 7 years old, I was obsessed with reading. I jumped from genre to genre a lot. I remember I was in this whole fantasy phase when I was in first grade, so I was 6 years old. I loved the Rainbow Magic series. I'm not sure if that's popular nowadays or not, but at least when I was that age, I was completely obsessed. So I love fantasy. And jump forward a few years, when I was in 4th grade, I started getting into historical fiction, and more specifically World War II. Of course, I wrote Diary of the Gold Rush on the California Gold Rush, as kind of implied by the title. But I was interested in historical fiction, and I read a bunch of World War II books. Jump to present day, like right now, I'm very interested in the dystopian genre. So my book Nightingale, it is in the dystopian genre, and who knows where I'm going to go from the future, but as of now, I'm stuck in the dystopian genre. And another thing I did was that I kept a journal, but the writing was kind of terrible. If you look back at my journal entries from when I was about 6, 7 years old, it was all, today was a good day, I had fun, I have homework, I'm going to sleep now, tomorrow is going to be a fun day. And I'm not sure how many of you guys in the audience have kept a journal. Maybe you just wanted to try it because it looks aesthetic, and we're all obsessed with keeping pretty journals. I tried, I failed, so I'm not even going to get into that. Or maybe some of us, our parents, just want us to keep a journal to practice our writing skills. Either way, I had one. I kind of failed at it terribly, but yeah, that's basically my journaling life. And another thing, or I guess the last highlight of my early life or childhood, was that I had a crazy imagination. I played with dolls up until the age of 11 and 12, and that, looking back now, that is kind of embarrassing considering that I know a lot of like young people or young kids nowadays basically like stop playing with dolls when they're like 6 or like 8. But I believe that by doing that and like playing, making up stories at when I was younger, it definitely helped with engaging my imagination, and it definitely helped with developing and brainstorming my stories that I would write a few years later. So how did I start writing? This is kind of funny, I guess, but I actually began writing in 4th grade during math class at school because I was bored. And yes, this is true. There's not like some creative writing class that I attended and I was like sparked with an idea. No, it was just because I was bored in school, so I took a piece of paper, a pencil, and I just began writing. And so, of course, when I first started writing my first book, I had no creative writing experience whatsoever, so I didn't really know what I was doing like the entire way. I had no outline or plot, and this is because, I have never attempted creative writing before then. The only writing that I had done would be like schoolwork, where we would write short stories or poetry, or just my terrible journal entries, which were kind of sad. But Diary of the Gold Rush was heavily inspired by what I was learning in school at that time, which was obviously the California Gold Rush. And I did write on paper at first. This was because when I was in 4th grade, we didn't really have access to many computers within school, but I did transfer it onto my computer later on, so I could self-publish it. And with that, Diary of the Gold Rush was self-published 1 year later through Amazon KDP. So that's basically how I first got into writing. So after I published Diary of the Gold Rush, I kind of disappeared from the writing world for like half a decade. I took a break mainly for school and extracurriculars. Looking back at my junior high years, I was pretty busy. My time was filled with, sports. I was student council. I had a bunch of other stuff going, music. So I didn't really have that much time to write, but I did continue writing. Just I didn't, dedicate my time to finishing an entire book. So during that time, I wrote multiple short stories, although a lot of them were just unfinished. Looking back at Google Docs, there's a bunch of weird ones floating around nowadays. And I did write plays. I tried poetry, although I'm not that great at writing it. But that's basically how I spent my 5 years away from actually writing. So in late March, I began writing again, and this was mainly because of the pandemic. And like the reason I started writing in 4th grade, I kind of just woke up one day and wanted to write another book. Yeah, it wasn't very great or anything, but this time around I had a lot more creative writing experience than I did when I wrote Diary of the Gold Rush, but I still had to teach myself some things through YouTube, and I just watched a lot of writing channels. And with that, in October 2020, Nightingale was self-published again through Amazon KDP. And apart from writing Nightingale, I also teach classes on creative writing, as previously mentioned. And from that TY was founded, but that's a story for another day, so tune in when we discuss that. But I taught 2 writing classes, the Writer's Workshop and the Road to Publication. I recognize a lot of you from both of those classes, but Writer's Workshop is basically talking about writing fundamentals for writers of all stages, and we basically cover the elements that make up a story. This is a class that I taught during TYE summer, last summer. Wow, it's not even been 6 months, and I can't even remember that far. But yeah, I taught that during TYE summer, so a lot of you guys I know took that class, so hopefully you enjoyed it. And my other writing class is called the Road to Publication. I hosted this one time, and that's because it's a lot longer. It's 10 weeks as opposed to 1 week, and that one's mostly for more advanced writers, and the end goal is to publish their own book. I've been getting a lot of questions lately from a lot of people asking if I'm going to host this class again, and the answer is yes, I am actually thinking of hosting that again pretty soon, but more information will come further along in the webinar. So future plans. As of now, I definitely do want to continue writing. I plan on writing and publishing 1 book each year up to when I graduate high school. And yeah, that sounds really ambitious, but hopefully I can do it. My next book, I am in the very early stages of brainstorming, so nothing is set in stone yet. But the title I'm thinking of is When the World Turns Gray. It's dystopian again, and hopefully it will come out in November 2021. So I'm giving myself a full year to kind of figure out this whole writing thing and to write my 3rd book. Yeah, 3rd book. I will also continue teaching classes, both my personal writing ones and other writing classes, or just classes in general at TYE. So definitely stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for more news regarding TYE summer, because we do have a lot of really cool classes planned for that. So that's basically concludes topic 1. That was kind of rushed, I guess, but I didn't want to bore you guys with more information about myself and my writing journey. So we're going to go straight into topic 2, which is where I explain the publishing process, but more simplified. So to non-writers, they may see writing a bit like this. So first is planning, and then writing, and then publishing. And if you're a writer, you'll know that this is not really as easy as it sounds. So I broke it up. I guess I broke up the publishing process into kind of sub-steps, mini steps, so I can explain them more in depth and provide you guys with some insight on each tiny little step instead of just presenting it as a whole. So step 1 is definitely brainstorming and planning. You guys pretty much all know what this is. Brainstorming is coming up with ideas. I would say it shouldn't be so organized because, as much as we love aesthetic journals, it's kind of impossible as a writer to stay organized all the time. So this is the time, if you have a writer's journal, just to jot down any ideas, because you never know, one of those ideas could lead to your next book. And after you brainstorm a lot, then you kind of get into planning. And this is a lot more structured, and during this stage, you kind of should get a basic outline or an idea of how your story is actually going to play out. After you finish that, you go straight into the next step, which is outlining. And I place a pretty big emphasis on this because I don't do it. And looking back, I probably should have. But after brainstorming a rough plot of your story, it's time to outline. So outlining can take the form of many methods. These are just three most popular ones I see. Definitely the plot hill, and the image on the right, that is an example of a plot hill, or the 9-dot plot. It's basically just 9 dots, as the name kind of suggests, and the 3-act structure, which is a bit more complicated. So for the writers who want a more detailed outline, so it definitely does help guide your story, I would suggest going with the 3-act structure as your outline. But although there are many different outlining ways, the main purpose of outlining stays the same no matter what method you choose to go with. And that is to help guide the story, prevent plot holes, and just in general, just to make sure the pacing is even and the story makes sense. And just a note here, your outline definitely can change. I know so many authors and writers, their final story is completely different from their initial outline. Like I mentioned before, I did not outline before starting both of my books. I probably should have, but if you look at my first draft of Nightingale and compare it to the one that you can buy off Amazon, it's almost like two completely different stories. So don't feel bad if you're like in the middle of writing and you decide, oh, my initial outline kind of sucks, it's not good. You can definitely like deviate away from there. It's your outline is just kind of there to provide a general route or path that you could follow with your book, although you can choose to basically do whatever you want with it because, you know, it's your book. So the next step is, of course, writing. And this step is definitely self-explanatory. You just write. And writing, I would suggest using writing techniques. I kind of cover this in my writer's workshop class, literary and narrative devices. And of course, stick to your outline, although you can definitely deviate away from there anytime. And another thing I recommend is writing on Google Docs or Microsoft Word. And this is just because paper is really hard to keep organized. I know this from when I first started writing, Diary of the Gold Rush. I wrote with pink ink on binder paper, ruler paper, don't know what it's called, but it was so hard to find every page. Sometimes I lost a page, sometimes my chapter connected to a wrong chapter. So I would suggest definitely writing on a computer, either Google Docs or Microsoft Word. But keep in mind when publishing, most publishing houses and self-publishing sites require you to upload a Microsoft Word document, not a Google Doc PDF. But there is a way to transport your Google Doc into Microsoft Word. So I always write on Google Docs because I can't figure out how to use Microsoft. Okay, the next step is, of course, editing our favorites. So there are a ton of editing steps, but for the sake of sparing you guys from boredom, I'm just going to focus on the most important two that I would recommend going for. So the first one is content editing, and this is kind of self-explanatory also. This is basically all about content and your storyline. So while content editing, look for plot holes, inconsistencies, incorrect character motives, etc. Basically the stuff that you write, not necessarily grammar because that's the other type of editing. So leading right into that, grammar editing, this one obviously use Grammarly, but anyways, look for missed punctuation marks, incorrect tense or point of view issues, missing punctuation, etc. So these are kind of self-explanatory, but definitely go through both of these because going through them definitely does help make your story a lot better. So the big question here, how do I edit? And I receive this question a lot, and it's kind of sad because I can't give an exact answer because it really deviates from writer to writer. Some writers love the editing process. They do it, they like have their whole like setup, whereas others not so much. So these are just the tips that I would recommend to any writer. Number one is always self-edit first, regardless of if you're getting an editor or not. Definitely self-edit. I think most editors will also tell you to self-edit before giving your manuscript off to them. And this is just so, you know, it'll save them time and it'll save you money. So while self-editing, read it over, correct and rewrite places you marked out while writing, and also use your resources. Ask family and friends to read over your manuscript for you to catch like the issues that you kind of just look over because, you know, you're the author. It's really easy to like look over tiny mistakes. And some resources I would recommend are Edit Out Loud, which is basically a software, or I think it's an app. And what it does, it basically reads your book back to you, I guess. I don't know how to say that. But it can be kind of time consuming to listen to your book as an audiobook. But I think, well, from my experience with Nightingale, I think if you actually listen to someone reading it to you, it's a lot easier to catch repetitive phrases or like incorrect, pronouns or whatever, rather than just like writing and reading it through it. Because I think as a writer, you're just like so done with writing at that point, you kind of just like breeze over those mistakes. And the next one I would recommend is Grammarly. We all know what this is. We get the YouTube ads all the time, but I feel like this is a very useful in terms of catching grammar mistakes. A question here, should I get Grammarly Premium? I would say it's not necessarily it's not necessary, especially if you're a beginning writer. I think what Grammarly Premium does catch is what's it called? Passive voice. Yeah, that's what it's called. I can't remember. But as a beginning writer, I think you should just stick with like for Grammarly, it'll be fine. But definitely use your resources. These are just the two I recommend. You can find a ton of YouTube videos out there. It's all free, awesome, that will teach you how to write better and will kind of guide you through the publishing process. So after self-editing, you can find an editor, and this step is optional. So that kind of leads us into the next big question, which is, do I need an editor? And this one also, it depends on the writer. Most professional authors will advise hiring an editor, but as a young author or teen writer, I think it isn't necessarily mandatory. And I did hire an editor for Nightingale, but for my future books, I believe I'm just gonna get a couple of writing friends to help me look over it. And this is just because, one, editors are expensive, as you can see by my little calculations at the bottom. And number two, I'm still a young author, so I don't really feel a need to get my book professionally edited a bunch of times. I think just by getting a few friends or people in the writing community to look over it, it should be fine. So if you decide that you do want an editor, where do I find one? So you can either go for a professional service. If you just search up editing services on Google, you can choose from a bunch of sites, but those are usually pretty expensive. Or you can go for the freelancers, and I would suggest Fiverr or Upwork. I found my editor off of Fiverr. Usually these freelancers are a lot cheaper than professional services, as can be expected. But in terms of how much does an editor actually cost, I see most professional services are in between 1 cent to 3 cents per word. Doing the calculations for you, 60K words will range from about $600 to $1,800, which is pretty expensive if you think about it. For Nightingale, I got it all edited for $300, and that the reason why it's so cheap, or I guess the price is more reasonable, is because I found a freelancer instead of going for the professional services. So the next step, I think we're almost at the end, is formatting. So this is definitely tedious because you have to think about so many things. I think the main two, interior and exterior. For the interior design, both print and ebooks, you guys need to consider it. So basically, how is the inside of your book going to look? Is it going to just be basic? Is it going to be detailed? Are you going to add icons? Are you going to have chapters? So all of that stuff needs to be considered when formatting your interior. And for exterior, I think only print books need this. As for like the back cover and spine, finding covers and like trim sizes, that's always kind of tedious. But I would recommend hiring somebody to format your book for you. And this is just because it's so tedious. And I went through formatting the interior of Diary of the Gold Rush by myself. Well, actually, technically, my mom did it for me, but it was really tedious. So you have to go through everything. If something's wrong, you have to, go through so many things, so many steps to find and fix that error. So for Nightingale, I found somebody off of Fiverr, and I got the entire interior formatted for only $10, which is so cheap. And I would definitely recommend getting someone to do it for you, because it's really hard and tedious to do by yourself. And as for book covers, you can either make one yourself. You can use Canva, just watch the copyright and copyright issues, or you can hire someone to make it for you. I believe the cheapest designers that I see on Fiverr are in between $15 to $20 for a front, spine, and back cover. So it's really up to you. I know a lot of people like to design it themselves because they actually want to like put together something for their book. While other people like me, I'm more lazy. I'm not an artist. My book is going to look so ugly if I attempt to draw something or even like use a picture to like design something. So I found a cover designer and we kind of went from there. So the next step, I think this last step should be, is of course publishing. So when it comes to publishing, there are two main routes that you can choose. The first one is self-publishing, and the big, I guess, self-publishing programs or sites are KDP. This is a part of Amazon, Ingram Spark. This one's great. It allows you to publish ebook, paperback, and hardcover, but you do have to pay for the barcode or the ISBN, and you have to pay $50 per book. And of course, Lulu. I don't know a whole lot about Lulu, but I know they take a lot more royalties. So I would say, as a beginning author, go with KDP. One, it's free. Two, the printing is actually not that bad, and three, it's not as professional as I guess Ingram Spark, but you do earn a lot more royalties from it, and it's super easy to use. So the pros of self-publishing, definitely anybody can publish. You can literally be terrible at writing, but you can scrape together a manuscript and Amazon will, let you publish it. That's a great part. And another great part is that you keep 100% royalties after Amazon takes a bunch. One thing to keep in mind here is that if you are publishing a print book, you have to subtract the printing cost, which is, I think for this book, which is about 300 pages, the print cost is a little over $4. And then after that, Amazon takes their royalties and then you get the rest. So when you calculate that, I think KDP does it for you, but that's just something to keep in mind. And another pro, a great one, is that there is no stress or deadlines to meet when you're self-publishing. I think with traditional publishing, it can get really stressful because they give you dates to meet. They're like, by this date, you have to have your book done. By this date, you have to, submit it. And I feel like as a teen writer and a young writer in general, going self-publishing route is a lot more stress-free, especially since we have so much else going on in our lives. It's just a lot easier than dealing with a publishing house. So that's all about self-publishing. And on the other side, there's also traditional publishing. And there are pros here too. I just see self-publishing as more doable as a teen writer. So for traditional publishing, you do get an advance, which is basically an initial paycheck. I believe for first-time authors, you get about $5,000, I believe that is. But of course, they have to accept you first. They reject a lot of people. So if your book is good enough, they accept it, you get an advance, which is an initial paycheck. And after that, I think the average royalty you get is 15% per book sold. And the publishing house also handles everything for you, which is editing, formatting, cover design. And for some people, that may sound like a relief, like I don't have to deal with it. But for other people, it may appear as more as a con because they like to control everything in the publishing process. If they don't like the cover that the publishing house chooses, you can't really do much about it. So it's kind of a win-lose situation, I guess. It really depends on the writer. But as a teen writer, and I think most of you out there are young writers, or at least teen writers, young writers, I guess, I would suggest going self-publishing at first. And as you get older, maybe you can try traditional publishing. So yay, my book is published. It's over, right? Not exactly. I mean, in the publishing sense, yes, your book is published. You did it. That's the end of the publishing journey. But after that, you have to deal with marketing. You have to develop marketing strategies. You have to track your sales. There's just a lot more that authors don't really talk about because it's more after the publishing process. But, I just published Nightingale, so I'm just getting into the marketing phase and the whole tracking your sales phase. So just keep that in mind. The publishing process does not necessarily end with just publishing. So another small note, as previously mentioned, I teach writing classes. So this is kind of to answer everybody's questions about when are you hosting the Road to Publication class again. So a brief recap about this class. It's geared towards students 5th through 8th grade. Last time I geared it towards students in 2nd grade to 8th grade, I believe. But after analyzing everybody's writing, I believe more in the junior high range would be more reasonable, because for some younger students, it can get kind of stressful, especially if they don't have a good foundation in English. So this time I'm aiming it towards students 5th through 8th or even like high school. The length is 10 weeks. We meet once a week, and the end goal is to publish a book on Amazon KDP. The cost is $100, and that is basically $10 per class. And for more info and registration, definitely check out my website. It's linked right there. I think I actually have to update that, so I'll go do that right after the webinar. But just like bookmark that, and you can always check out later. So these are just some of the books that my previous students have published. You can basically find these all on Amazon. And the other students, I believe, last time I checked, they were still in the process of writing and editing, revising, formatting, but hopefully those will be out for sale soon. So now let's break for a giveaway, everybody's favorite part. So this is how it's going to work. So on the following slide, I have a question. It's going to pop up in a minute. So basically, if you want to participate, answer the following question as fast as you can in the public chat. Make sure it's set to everybody. This is because my co-founder and friend Jacqueline, she's going to be helping me track the winners because it's kind of hard to keep an eye on the chat while speaking at the same time. So make sure it's set to public, because if she can't see your response, it's kind of, you won't be eligible to win prizes. And if you do participate, make sure to use your real name or even like an identifiable name in the Zoom display. The first person who gets the correct answer on the following slide will receive a free signed copy of Nightingale. So this thing right here. And we will figure out how this is going to work later, but I'll give you like a second to get everything set up. Make sure it's set to, the chat is set to everybody, and again, this is kind of a speed thing. So the first person to get the right answer will be the winner. All right, so hopefully you're all ready. Then this is the question. What genre is my book Nightingale written in?
All right, Nicole's answer popped up in the chat first. So Nicole wins the first prize.
Yay, good job. Yeah, so as for, well, this kind of goes for all the winners because there are more giveaways, so stay tuned for that. Just private message either Jacqueline and I with like an email or some kind of contact information, and we will be in touch after the webinar. So great job, Nicole. And for those of you who didn't get a chance to participate, or maybe like you didn't like, or for whatever reason, there are going to be more giveaway chances further along in the webinar, so don't be that disappointed, I guess. All right, well, I guess moving along, we're going to go into topic 3, which is tips and advice for aspiring writers. So y'all here. Okay, so for young and beginning writers, I would say definitely read a lot. I think that's basically what set me apart from like other kids my age, I guess when I was younger, is that I love to read. And while everybody else was kind of playing out in the streets, riding bikes, I was reading Rainbow Magic a lot, and that definitely helped me develop my imagination. Again, I play with dolls a lot as well, but definitely read, explore different genres, kind of explore around. Maybe you'll find something that you like, so definitely do read. And definitely start small as well. Don't expect to publish a book on your first go. What I did is pretty, well, I guess not a lot of young writers can really manage to publish a book on their first attempt, and that's just, you know, like expected, right? If you're only like 9 years old, if you're only 10 or 8, 9, 10 years old and you attempt to write a book, chances are you probably aren't going to succeed on your first try, and that is completely okay. I would just suggest starting with fanfic. I know that's kind of a controversial topic, but you know, there's nothing wrong with writing good fanfic. You can definitely try writing short stories, poetry, and plays. Another thing you can do, I didn't write it on here, but they're kind of like, you write an ending for a story that you really like, but you like the story, not the ending so much. So you kind of take the story, you take the idea, and you write an alternative ending. So all of these are kind of writing exercises, I guess, to help your creative side grow. And once you perfect that, then definitely get into attempting to write a book. And another tip I have is join a writing community. There are tons of writing communities out there. Actually, I'm in the process of creating one with my other co-founder right now that probably won't launch until a lot later. But as of now, there are a ton of really good writing communities out there. So just explore around, make friends. The publishing journey can sound very intimidating if you do it alone. So make sure you at least have one friend or mentor along the way. The next tip, makes connections, find a mentor, kind of the same thing as joining writing communities. The more connections you know, the more that you'll grow as a writer. So definitely explore around, get out of your comfort zone, maybe private message someone on Instagram who's published a few books, ask, like share experiences, make friends, all that good stuff. And last tip for young and beginning writers, write all of your ideas down. You never really know when they may come in handy later on. And again, I suggest having a writing journal for this. It doesn't even have to be a physical journal. I know I use Google Docs as my writing journal, so whenever I have a stroke of inspiration, I just kind of write it down and I figure it out later. And for more experienced writers thinking of publishing or already are publishing, definitely acknowledge the tips above. That kind of goes for everybody, not just young and beginning writers. And another tip for more experienced writers, when going through the publication process, definitely do not rush. This was a mistake that I made with my book, Nightingale. If you guys have been following my writing journey for a while, you'll know that I have a book trailer and character portraits, and I made my cover very early on. And looking back, I think I was just so excited. I just wanted to get into the fun stuff, making marketing images. But after I made that, after I got my book trailer, all my characters drawn, I kind of went back to my book and I was like, wait, this doesn't really match up, and my plot changed a lot. So I would say definitely don't rush. And I think when I was writing Nightingale among the summer months, about to July and August, was when I really felt rushed because I was trying to get an editor. I was trying to finish the entire publication process before school started in August. So definitely don't rush. You have tons of time unless you're publishing traditionally, but that's a whole other issue. But yeah, give yourself a lot of time. You're in charge of the writing journey, and basically just like don't stress about it. It'll be fine. And again, find friends in the community. This one is really important as well. I didn't really start getting engaged in the writing community until I was more than halfway done with Nightingale. And I think if I had like a few friends that were also writers along at the time when I first started, they definitely could have helped me kind of structure the book rather than just me trying to figure everything out on my own. So definitely reach out into the community, regardless if you're a beginning writer or advanced. Make friends, make connections, find mentors, and definitely do not rush. So those are basically the tips that I have. Of course, there are so many more, but what time is it? It's almost 3:40, but I definitely don't want to go over time. So we're going to go into our fourth topic, which are frequently asked questions. So I've been getting a lot of questions recently from a lot of people, so I compiled the top 5 frequently asked questions in the following slides. So the first question that I often get is, what age is the best time to start writing? And this one is kind of difficult to answer because it really depends on the writer. I know just because I published or I wrote a book when I was about 9 years old doesn't mean that every 9-year-old can, write a book. It really depends on the writer. I would say before you start writing, definitely get a firm English foundation, because unless like you're writing in another language or something. But I would say any age is a great time to start. I know a lot of writers, they think they're too old to write, or you're like 40, 30, whatever, and you see all these teen authors, all these like child like writers getting started, and you might be a little bit discouraged. But definitely do write. It's never too late. In the writing community, I'm friends with a lot of adults who are just on the writing journey with their very first book. So it's never too late. Definitely don't be discouraged if you're too old or too young. Just start writing, and you never know where it might take you. All right, second frequently asked question, how is creative writing different from academic writing? And this one I get a lot. I would say the main difference is that creative writing, it definitely helps you develop your creative side of your brain. I was actually talking to one of my old English teachers on Friday, I think, and we were kind of discussing the fact that creative writing isn't really taught in school, for the main reason because it won't appear on the SAT. They'll never ask you to write a book on standardized testings ever. So if you're in school, most likely the English that you learn is like analyzing things, writing essays, personal narratives, stuff like that. But I think creative writing, it definitely does help with academic writing. I know a ton of my students that took my class and have been writing since summer. Their teachers have like, well, they told me this, but they said like their academic writing has definitely improved because they've been writing creatively. Is that a word? Writing creatively, whatever. But I would say the main difference is that creative writing definitely forces you to use your mind a lot more because you have to make everything up. You have to build a world. You have to make characters. You have to give them motives. You have to make plots. So it's really fun though. So I would say I would definitely prefer creative writing over academic writing, but they do share a lot of similarities as well. So the next question is, did you take any creative writing classes or courses? And a simple answer is that I did not. I never took any type of creative writing courses. I've never had an English tutor. I've never really taken any sort of academic classes outside of what was taught in school. And so, yeah, that's the answer. I did not take any creative writing classes, but I would consider myself self-taught. I watch YouTube a bunch. Mostly just writing channels because I believe, just like learning by doing. While you write, you definitely do learn. And there are a ton of really great teachers out on YouTube who are a lot more experienced, and there are a ton of things to learn from just watching them write and just listening to their tips. So next question, very popular one. How do you balance writing with schoolwork and just life in general? And the simple answer is that it's really hard to kind of incorporate writing along with everything else because, I'm managing 2IE, I'm doing another startup at the moment, school, internships, all that stuff. But I think when I was writing Nightingale, at least, I had some time off from school, so that gave me a lot more time to write. But nowadays, now, school is back in full session. There's finals coming up, so it's kind of stressful. But in terms of writing, I usually try to get up, or either I get up early or I stay up a bit late to get some writing in. But I think definitely setting aside a time for writing helps with, managing time, especially during school. So the last question I have, I think this is number 5, is how do I get better at writing? And this is something, of course, everybody kind of wants to know. So I would suggest, if you want to get better at writing, you definitely can't do it overnight. It's not one of those things that it just clicks in place overnight. Definitely the best way to get better at writing is to write. Looking back at the time when I first started writing Nightingale, it's a bit crazy because when I look back, I'm like, oh, this was not good. I thought my writing was good at that time. It was not. So especially when you first start writing, you'll see a definite jump in like writing skill ability. From the beginning to, I would say, the middle or the end of your story. So it's actually really cool to see your progress. So definitely, if you want to get better at writing, definitely write. I would say the other thing to help you get better is to read and watch, like tutorials or even like YouTube videos on writing because they all help. So this is my second giveaway. Let's break for a giveaway. And to honor all the creative youngsters attending today, I love young people, or I love kids, I guess. So in order to honor all the creative youngsters attending today, the youngest attendee attending today will also receive a free signed copy of Nightingale right here, the same one. So this one is also kind of self-explanatory. If you wish to participate, type your current age into the public chat, not the age that you were 10 years ago, your current age, and please don't lie, it's kind of an honor system. And this is just to acknowledge the young writers that are here today.
All right, so we have 3 8-year-olds, so, 6.
All right, I see 11, 10, 8, 9, 6. All right, so I think 6 is the youngest one, unless anybody else wants to participate. I know a lot of people don't want to reveal their age, totally understandable. But I think as of now, 6 is the youngest, so I think that's Christopher. Yep, Christopher, either private message me or Jacqueline a contact method, email or phone number, whatever, and we'll be in touch later. So shout out to all the creative young people here today. Okay, the last giveaway today is also kind of question-based, so anybody can participate. The first person who gets the correct answer this time will receive a free Echo Dot. It looks like this. But if you previously won, you cannot win again, just to give everybody else a chance to win. So it's the same way, make sure you type your answer in the public chat, make sure your name is something recognizable. And this is the question. What is one pro that I covered of self-publishing?
All right. Wow, that was fast. Fiona's answer popped up in the chat first. So Fiona, congratulations. You got an Echo Dot.
Yeah, great job. Yeah, Fiona, definitely no deadlines. That's a huge one that I talked about a lot. So again, all three of you winners, congratulations. Definitely private message either Jacqueline and I, contact method, and we will be in touch after the webinar. So with that, this is the end of the webinar. I hope you enjoyed. I know I kind of talked a bit too much, but I managed to keep it under an hour, so that's a great accomplishment. So now is the time for Q&A. If you have questions about anything, myself, my books, more advice, now is the time to ask them. You can either speak out loud or type in the chat, and I will try my best to answer them.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I know the previous road to publication class and the one you're going to do, are they going to be like the same?
A lot of features, or I guess a lot of like the material covered is going to be the same because, you know, like I tested it out on like the previous group and a lot of people did really well with that, but I am going to add in a few more other elements. So definitely if you participated last time, you can either take it again or, you know, you have the materials already so you don't have to, but it's going to be kind of the same material, but I am going to add some more stuff in that I learned from my own writing journey.
Okay.
All right, so a question from Max. Where do you buy your book? And I like totally forgot to give you guys the link earlier, but I'll link it in the chat right now. Just click that link. It'll take you to the Amazon or the book's Amazon page. You can buy it off of there. Or if you don't want to click the link for any reason, you can search up on Amazon. The keywords are Nightingale, Emma Victoria. Something along the lines of this should pop up, and that would be my book. And another question, how long did it take to publish your book? So the first one I wrote, Down the Gold Rush, I started writing this in 4th grade. I published it 1 year later in 5th grade. I believe there was about 1 year, I guess, but you know, I took like 6 months off in the middle because I did not feel motivated to finish. But for Nightingale, it took me roughly 6 months from start to finish. All right, another question from Max. How would you rate your new book? That is an interesting question. I've never been asked that before. To be honest, I've never been asked to rate my book before. I actually really like the plot. I think it's like pretty interesting. I mean, it's easy for me to say because I wrote it, but I do think the plot is kind of interesting. There are some spots where it may be kind of slow for some people, and that is because, again, I don't outline. I probably should, but you know, for my next book, I definitely will. But I would say maybe rated out of 10, probably a 8 or a 9. All right, another question. This one is private message. Why do you call yourself Emma Victoria on your book? So that is actually my pen name. Actually, for those of you who know me, that is my first and middle name, Emma Victoria. The reason I chose to go by that is because, again, it's just like, I guess, security or like privacy reasons too. I didn't go by pen name for my first book, as you can probably tell by the humongous title. But the reason I wanted to go by that for my second book is because, one, privacy, and two, my name is super common. You'll probably find like 1,000 or even like more than that people with the exact same name as me. So I definitely wanted to try to, I guess, like make myself stand out from the rest of the people with the same name. So that's why I chose to use a pen name. All right, another private message. What's your favorite subject? That one is a bit more personal, not really, I guess, writing related. But I think as of now, my favorite subject will either be, I am honestly not too sure. Probably either engineering, which I'm taking right now, or either math or English. All right. Last question, I believe, because I don't want to go for too long. From John, what grade are you in? I'm currently in 10th grade, a sophomore. And another question, I know I just promised that was the last one, but very quick, from Kevin, do you attend any writing contests? When I was younger, I think I did. Well, not really writing contests, but I submitted my work to be kind of reviewed by more professional writers, like Stone Soup. That's a magazine. You can go check that out. I did attend a writing contest on Wattpad called the Shaw Rocket Prize. I entered the first chapter of Nightingale, but unfortunately I wasn't eligible to win the prizes because you have to be a Canadian resident, but it was a really fun experience.
All right, okay, I think that's all the questions that we're going to cover for today. You can always email us at the Young Expressionist, and Emma will be able to respond to your questions. And this is recorded, so you can always watch it. The recording, we'll send it out if you want to go over anything. But yeah, other than that, thanks for coming. Congratulations to all our giveaway winners. We'll contact you soon with more information. Thanks for coming.